Hi, it's Kamon Reynolds. Let's get to queen rearing. I told you we were going to do it. It took a while. Sorry about that, but we've been pulling honey. We're still pulling honey. We've been moving around 100 and something queens the last couple days, and we're just requeening some stuff and splitting a lot of stuff. And a lot of you have asked if we're selling queens right now. We are not. We need the next couple hundred ourselves. But if we do get to that point and we need to move some queens, we will let you all know. Appreciate that very much though. Alright, so we've got a lot to cover with this queen rearing. So this is going to be a little bit of a long video, but we're going to break this up into 4 or 5 videos at least, because we're going to show you all the process, because you've got to set up the starter box, which you can do it with a 5-frame nuke. That's what we're going to be doing for backyard queen rearing. We typically use a strong double deep because we like to make a lot more cells. But just if you only need a few dozen queens, this is a great method. It works very well. And we had some extra queens, so here's a virgin that hatched out today because we didn't get her into a mating nuke quick enough, so we'll have to take care of her. I really don't like fooling with virgins. Cells are much easier to get along with, but you can see how light colored she is and just real fuzzy. She's pretty slender in the abdomen area, but she will swell up once she goes on her mating flight and comes back and her body kicks into high gear. All that awesome egg laying production. And when you produce a high quality nutritious queen, they are going to be so much better than what you can buy, and you're saving yourself a lot of money. I mean, she comes back mated, she's worth like almost $30, because once you calculate purchasing the queen, which some guys charge more than $30, and then shipping and all that stuff, and you don't know what you're getting. These guys, not all of them, some raise quality queens, but a lot of them don't give them a chance to even get evaluated long enough, in my opinion. So they need to lay for a little while. There's nothing like raising your own queens, and the best part is you're not just getting run-of-the-mill stuff. You're picking from your best colonies in your yard, and you're spreading those genetics throughout. So let's get into this right here. There's going to be a good bit to cover. By the way, our giveaways tomorrow, I think I might have mentioned that, but I can't remember if I did. I can't remember how many takes this is either, so who's counting at this point? We're also going to be doing a giveaway on queen rearing material, cell bar, grafting tool, queen cups, the whole 9 yards. Everything you need to get yourself set up to graft, and since we've reached 3,000 subscribers, so hang on, and we will start that as soon as we announce the winner for the smoker tomorrow. Alright, let's get into this starter colony. Now this is what's called a starter finisher, because this colony is set up to start the queen cells, and it is going to finish the queen cells. Now there's a couple different ways, actually there's a lot of different ways to raise queens. This little method here is going to be a starter and a finisher. Alright, so let's get in. See how strong this colony is? This is extremely important. This frame right here is nothing but capped brood. We're going to pull these out here in a second. What we're trying to do is create a swarm-like condition. You need a lot of nurse bees. I mean an extreme amount of nurse bees. We want ideal conditions, so we need to have plenty of nurse bees that have plenty of nutrition. And if you're in a dearth period, you're going to have to give it to them by a few other means. One thing that we do is when we go to our big colonies, we will pull frames of bee bread and we will freeze them and hold them back so that when we're raising queens through our dearth period, they have access to optimal nutrition, which only comes from pollen. Now we also are going to feed these colonies as well for reasons I'm going to explain later. But you've got to have a ridiculously packed nuke, single, double deep, whatever your system is, it's got to be strong with lots of nurse bees and plenty of nutrition, or your queens are going to suffer. It only takes 16 days for a queen to go from egg lay to hatching out, which is extremely impressive because she is the most important complex bug in the hive, and she can do it in 16 days. Drones take longer than worker bees, and worker bees take 21 days. So that just shows you the power of optimal nutrition. And if we want those superior queens, we've got to give them just that. Let's get in here. Now, we're going to do a video on combining bees, all the rules that there are, but we have shaken multiple hives worth of nurse bees into this colony. Now, one of the things that you have to do, you cannot have larvae in here for them to be able to raise queens off of. If you give them even one, they are going to raise that, and she's probably going to be older than what you graft, and then she's going to hatch out and go through and sting all of your cells. Ask me how I know. So don't do that. What you can do is just, you don't even have to put any brood in here at all. You can just put food frames and then just shake a bunch of nurse bees, but always make sure that you have good protein in there. You can feed sugar syrup and pollen patties if you don't have any forage coming on, because they really need to feel that stimulation of, we don't just have plenty of food in the combs, we have surplus coming in, because that goes into their stomachs as they process that sugar syrup and invert it and clean it out. Bees have filters in their bodies, if you didn't know that. That's one of the reasons why feeding organic and other types of sugars that are not white sugar can be hard on the bees' system, especially during winter time, because they're filtering out those minerals that are in raw types of sugar. Alright, so this right here is just a food frame. There's a little bee bread in there, but this one is mostly, yeah, there's some bee bread down in there. It's mostly honey, which is just fine. Let's get that out of the way. This frame right here is important if you're wanting to do this for a long period of time, and there's no reason after a while you can't beef it up with more nurse bees. Excuse me, pardon me. It's really hard to handle these frames. Now this right here is a lot of calf brood. There's a little larvae on the side, so what you can do, and I suggest you do this on your first time, is that you come back 2 days later after you've set this up. That's the day you're going to graft, and you're going to go back through all these frames and shake them off and double check that they're not raising any queens off of any potential larvae you might have missed. And in that way you don't have any surprises. So it won't hurt to go back in, shake the bees off, and make sure that they're not raising any queens. Alright, so once this hatches out, that's going to be thousands of larvae, nurse bees that are going to help feed your queen larvae good. And I like to do a couple rounds in one of these. So when you get done with your first round, there's no reason you can't start raising another round and just make plenty of queens, expand your operation, or requeen the commercial garbage queens that you might have gotten. Alright, so this right here, I pulled it out a minute ago. This is where the royal jelly comes from. So what you can do on the day you set this up is get you 4 food frames and throw you in a frame with larvae. Come back 2 days later, check all of these frames and make sure that there's no started queen cells, and if you see any, just crush them. That'll be alright. But the nice thing is, if you put one on purpose, they start raising these queen cells right here. And now, let me get these bees off. We have access to plenty of royal jelly. You can just throw the larvae out, and you can scoop that out and put it into your grafting cups. This makes it so much easier to graft. It's gentler on the larvae, and it gives them more food. This stuff is so nutritious. However, it tastes disgusting. Absolutely disgusting. But it is very good for you, I'm sure. Now, we're going to pull this frame out, and all you've got to do is take either a grafting tool, or you can take just a little spoon, or just any really little thing, and just scoop that out and just dip just a tiny bit in all of your queen cups. So when you graft into them, you just go to town. You don't have to do that. You can do what's called dry grafting. And in our next video, we're going to graft again, and we're going to show you what ideal larvae look like. And that way you know what to shoot for. They should be floating in a nice pool of royal jelly. And if you use some larvae that have a lot of royal jelly, you can dry graft and not even have anything in the cups. It still is so much easier when you have that royal jelly down in there. So all you have to do is get you one frame with larvae, stick it down in there, 2 days later, come back, and that's what I recommend, is that you set these little starter finisher colonies with plenty of nurse bees, one frame of larvae, and then you come back 2 days later to start grafting into it. You should have little cells started like this with plenty of royal jelly packed, so you can use it to graft in. And then of course remove this and stick this into another hive. Just crush the cells, because if you leave them, it's very likely that they'll continue building those cells and they might end up superseding a good queen that you already have. So just watch out for that. But then you just put your grafts down into here, and then they'll start working on those, because that's the only thing they have. And they're going to feed them so well because they have such a huge population of nurse bees. Now, let me stick this to the side. Again, nutrition is so important. We only have a short period of time. 3.5 days of the queen's time is while they're an egg. So it's an even shorter bit of time, and they cap the cell on day 6, I believe it is, day 6 after they hatch from an egg. So then you have just a really short window where they've got to give them all the nutrition that they need to develop into a fully mature queen and draw out a nice fat cell, so you can develop a nice big queen. And bigger queens are typically thought to be better for good reason. One, because they have a bigger spermatheca, which is a special organ the queens have that can hold all the drone sperm when they go on their mating flight. So if they have a bigger spermatheca, then that means they can potentially lay longer. And it also stands to pretty good reason that a queen that is mated properly, raised with better nutrition, there's a lot of nuances that we don't even know about yet, but it just stands to reason that if they have all of these things in ideal conditions, then you're going to have a queen that lays longer, lays better, and has a great amount of pheromone, which is so important. There's a lot we still need to learn about pheromones. It's pretty exciting stuff. That's one of the reasons I love beekeeping, is because there's a lot of areas we need to pioneer, and that's one thing over the next couple of years we really hope to start getting into. But getting that nutrition in there. So we've got bee bread frames in there. We've got plenty of bees. There's more bees hatching out. We're going to be grafting in our next video 30 queen cells into there, and I never get 100%. Sometimes I'll get into the upper 90s, but more often than not, after all things said and done, there's always a couple cells that look a little runty, and we'll show you what those look like. You can take those out, and I only try to go for the best with good big queens, and that way you don't have to worry about putting in a runny queen into a hive and then they supersede her because something's off with her. So let's show you what we're going to do next. Alright, now what you can do if you have a Jester nuke box, now you can use a regular nuke box. Remember, density is important. Whether you're using a medium, whether you're using a deep box, it doesn't matter. You have to have that nurse bee density. So make sure, if you're in a hot time of the year, they have plenty of ventilation. A 5-frame nuke packed like this in direct sun that's closed up could overheat. Now of course the entrance is open so they can fan themselves, but still, just put them in a shady spot, especially if you're in a warm time of the year. Now if you're in a cold area, it might be better to actually put them in sun. Know your season, but when you have bees this packed, they can overheat. They're a very hot insect. Alright, so what we're going to do with this one is feed it this queen candy, which is just honey and powdered sugar. And we'll show you how to make some of that. It's not that hard. You can also use other types of invert sugar. But what you can also do if you don't have access to this is you can cut a little hole in your box and put a quart jar inverted. And you can also make another one and have a quart jar with some water in it. And then put another box, like a lid on top, to keep those cool for the sun doesn't get them too hot. That water is going to help keep them cool. The sugar syrup is going to give them the feeling of surplus. Now if there's a nectar flow going on, you might not need to, but if these things are mostly nurse bees, that means they don't have a lot of forager bees. So keep that in mind. but they need to feel the extra nutrition. They need to feel like there's no reason whatsoever to hold back from these queens. Even though they have tons of food in here, that does not count. They need to feel incoming nectar. There's a lot of research that shows just turning on a sprinkler and spraying it onto the hives, the bees within just a handful of minutes will start reducing the amount of protein fed to the worker larva. And I imagine that also translates to queen larvae. I don't know. Especially when you have this many queens going, I would say let's not take the chance. So we're trying to give ideal conditions. We want swarming conditions, good quality queens. So we've got this all set up. Next video we're going to start grafting. You can use any old 5-frame nuke box or a different setup. If you have any comments or questions, feel free to always leave them below. Let's throw this together. I'm sure there are things that I have missed. That's why we're going to be doing multiple videos. Oops, excuse me. Alright. That is pretty good. I think they're ready to go. What we're going to do when we're ready for throwing our queens in is we're just going to pull one of those extra honey frames out, and we are going to put our graft bar in there. I always like to have the queen cells or the queen cups that we put in there right next to a bee bread frame. That is so important. The nurse bees need to be able to go right over, consume that bee bread, and they consume a lot of it. Just instead of consuming honey and converting that into wax scales, they take the bee bread and they secrete it through their forehead and create royal jelly. These insects are absolutely amazing. Whether it's inverting nectar into a preservable product, whether it's taking nectar and honey and converting it into beeswax, whether it's propolis gathering royal jelly, these bugs are amazing. So let's give them a little bit of feed, shall we? This is some Ultra Bee pollen sub, and we're just going to throw a little bit on there. Now some people will tell you not to feed this with small hive beetles. There's ways to do everything, but there's wrong ways to do it too. We'll get into that. Alright, so just throw that in there. And we'll come back and make sure they have more later. There are tons of bees, so they'll consume that quickly. The small hive beetles won't have a chance. And then we're just going to throw a chunk of this in there as well. There's no reason you can't use sugar syrup. I just like using this because it's quick and easy. Come out of the way, bug. Alright. So now things are doing good. Always feed your bees before you throw in your grafts. They already need to feel that optimal nutrition. Don't put in your grafts and then put the feed on. Do it beforehand. Anyways, comments or questions, always leave them below. Get set for that giveaway. Get set for the next getaway. I do need a getaway. Giveaway. And between all the other things we have going on, stick around. There's always something crazy going on, whether it's me going without a shirt or whatever. So Laurel's rolling her eyes. Yeah, I try to keep this channel real, and I've probably spent about 6 or 7 hours just this week working bees without a shirt. The difference is I know the consequences, and I'm willing to take them, and I kind of know when I can and can't get away with it. And I get stung all the time. I got stung like 3 times already today, and I'm probably fixing to get stung again. So let's cut this video.